Did Lizzy Borden murder her father and stepmother with an axe? 70-year-old Andrew Jackson Borden began his career as an undertaker and went on to become a president of the bank. He was a relatively wealthy man, but lived modestly in a narrow clapboard house in Fall River, Massachusetts, with his second wife, Abby Durfee Gray Borden, and his two grown daughters, Emma and Lizzie. The Bordens had a live-in maid also, named Bridget Sullivan. On the day of the murders, Miss Borden was upstairs dusting, and Bridget had been cleaning the windows, as instructed after vomiting in the yard. Miss Borden had visited the doctor, worrying their food had been poisoned, but he suspected that sickness was a result of food poisoning. Bridget chatted with the neighbor's maid over the fence and headed back inside around the time of Mrs. Borden arrived home. Bridget heard Lizzie laughing upstairs. Later, exhausted from sickness and her duties, Bridget left Lizzie ironing handkerchiefs in the dining room and Miss Borden relaxing on the sofa, and retired to her bedroom in the attic. 10 minutes later, Bridget was summoned by Lizzie yelling, "Come down, father's dead. Someone's come in and killed him." Andrew had been attacked with a small, sharp hatchet, hit 10 or 11 times in the face. A commotion followed as Bridget alerted a neighbor and the doctor. That was when Lizzie told her she'd heard Mrs. Borden come home and that she was probably upstairs. Bridget, together with a neighbor, went to check and found Abby lying on the floor of the guest room, similarly mutilated. It's believed she was struck 18 times with the same weapon. Unlike Mr. Borden, Abby's body was cold. It was estimated she had died sometime before her husband. Lizzy Borden was 32 years old when, 1 week later, she was arrested for the double murder of her father and stepmother. As Lizzie was a Sunday school teacher and an active member of the community, it was shocking news. Borden was unmarried and described by novelist and neighbor Victoria Lincoln as tall, stocky, jowly, dressy, and unremarkable. No matter her status, it was virtually unheard of for a woman, and a reasonably wealthy woman at that, to be accused of such a violent and intimate crime. There was a number of elements that led to Lizzy Borden being the prime suspect in the case. The first and most significant to the police was her demeanor. She simply didn't behave how they expected a woman to behave in these circumstances. Officer Harrington noted, "There was not the least indication of agitation, no sign of sorrow or grief, no lamentations of the heart, no commitment on the horror of the crime, and no expression of any to find the criminal to be caught." On top of that was the fact that she stood to gain financially from the deaths. While the Bordens did not live extravagantly, Andrew had accumulated a fortune wealth of close to $500,000, the equivalent of $10 million today. With Abby dead too, Emma and Lizzie would inherit everything. Other factors also showed Lizzie in a suspicious light. A drugstore clerk claimed Lizzie had visited the pharmacy the day before the murders to purchase prussic acid, otherwise known as hydrogen cyanide, a deadly poison. In the morning after the murders, Lizzie burned a blue dress that she said was stained with paint, but that the prosecutors believed to be stained with blood. The final nail of the coffin was the inquest. Lizzie testified over 3 days from August 9th to the 11th. She gave contradictory and incomplete statements and struggled to provide satisfactory answers. However, the trauma of discovering the body of her father could explain her demeanor. She went on trial 10 months later. Summoning up her defense, her lawyer, A.V. Jennings, declared, "There's not one particular of direct evidence in this case from beginning to end against Lizzy A. Borden. This is not a spot of blood. There is not a weapon that they have connected with her in any way, shape, or fashion. After an hour of deliberating, the jury found her not guilty. The trial had gripped the nation. The New York Times wrote, "It will be with a certain relief to every right-minded man or woman who has followed the case that the jury at the New Bedford has not only acquitted Ms. Lizzy Borden, but also done so with a promptness that was very significant. Despite the evidence and lack of the other potential suspects, the jury could not get on board with the idea that a woman of good standing could commit such a crime. The state had not hung a woman for centuries." After Lizzy's acquittal, she and her sister used their inheritance to buy a big house with 4 bathrooms in the Hill, the town's affluent neighborhood. Eventually, Emma moved out, possibly because of her sister's damaged reputation, which never recovered, and Lizzy lived there alone until she died in 1927, aged 67. Only the undertaker's assistants were present for her interment. Whether she was wrongfully accused or wrongfully acquitted, Lizzy Borden's name will forever be associated with this vicious crime. She was declared in court, but for years afterward, American children playing in the streets right outside her house and all around the country would sing the rhyme. Lizzy Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Strange suspicion. If Lizzy did kill her father and stepmother, one theory has been posed in more recent years to make sense of her motive. It focuses on the idea that Lizzy, and possibly her sister too, was a victim of incest at the hands of her father, and that was as repressed memories resurfaced, causing her to act out violently. Theorists who support this point to the unusual layout of the Borden house with its 2 staircases, requiring a person to go up one staircase to the master bedroom and up a separate staircase to the girls' rooms. They think Andrew had the house remodeled in a way that enabled him to abuse his daughters more easily, as Abby would not need to go up the stairs to the girls' rooms to access her own bedroom. Lizzy and Emma's lack of overt sorrow after their father's murder also leads to some to think that they were both glad to see him dead. During the trial, Lizzy's friend Alice Russell testified that Lizzy had come to her the night before and announced that she would soon be taking a vacation. She quoted Lizzy as saying, "Something is hanging over me. I cannot tell what it is. I feel afraid something is going to happen." Was this a foretelling of the revenge she was about to inflict on her father?